We'll do a review on Likutei Sichos in Chelek Chof Aleph, volume 21. This is the second Sicha for the Parsha of Terumah. The Rebbe explains a Rambam, which is very difficult to understand. He brings down questions from the Mefarshim and their answers. The Rebbe comes up with a Gavaldike insight over here about the place where they hid the Oren after the time came and the king Yoshio, he put it in a hidden place underneath the Mokem Ha Kodesh Hakadoshim, where it's now deep below. He hid the Aron over there. In that halacha, there's a lot of details that we don't understand why the Rambam brings it down and why the whole halacha is here with a mountain of questions, and everything is so smoothly and beautifully answered with the Rebbe's basic explanation that really, to begin with, the Oren had two spaces. It had the space in the Kodesh HaKadoshim on the Even HaShisiya, but it also had a place underneath. So therefore, there is a nitzchias in the building of the Beis Hamikdash, gewaldige encouragement also that even after the Churban, it's not three separate Beis Hamikdash, it's just one continuous, and same thing is with the Urim V'Tumim that Rambam brings down, as we'll see in the Sikha. But we'll go step by step, explaining first all the difficulties when you learn the Rambam without the Rebbe's explanation, and then we'll see how everything is beautifully answered with the Rebbe's explanation. Aleph, Terumah. In Onei Perik Dalet von Hilchos Beis HaBechira, in the beginning of the fourth chapter of Beis HaBechira, Nochdem wie der Rambam schreibt, was hat sich gefunden in Kodesh HaKadoshim, after the Rambam writes, what are the items that were in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, he says, as Even Hoiso beKodesh HaKadoshim b'Ma'arove, there was a stone in the west side of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, on that stone, the Oren would be lying. So the Rambam continues. So now like this. At the time when Shlomo built the Beis Hamikdash, all these details will be so important as the Rebbe explains it in the answer. So let's pay attention to the very specific details that Rambam writes. That when Shlomo built the Beis Hamikdash, and he knew that in the end it's going to be destroyed. This was from the very beginning. The building, as the Rebbe will bring out at the end, was built knowing that it's a Maisi, the Odom, it's built by Shlomo, so in the end, it's going to be destroyed. So at that time, so he built a place in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, Lignois boy ha'oren, to hide the Oren. In that place, Lamato below, b'mat moiniyos amukos ve'akal kolis. And the Rebbe at the end of the Sikha Api Pnimis HaTorah explained the exact Lashonos, what they represent. But mat moiniyos means in hidden places. Amukos means deep places. The akal kalos and roundabout places, not direct. That's where Shlomo HaMelech built. That's how he built it to begin with. That there is a place inside underneath the Kodesh HaKadoshim, Matmonias Amukal Kalkalis. And then what happened later on? Yoshio HaMelech Tziva v'Gonzoi b'Mokim Shabona Shlomo. And King Yoshio instructed, and they hid the Oren the Oren Munach on the stone, on the Evan. So then Yeshayahu instructed that they hid the Oren b'mokim shabana shleima, in that place that Shleima is built. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, "Vayomer la'levim hamevinim l'chol Yisrael hakadoshim laHashem." So he says to the Levim, Yeshayahu says to the Levim, those who understand, and to all Yidden who are faithful and kodesh and hold Hashem, he said, "Tnu as Aaron hakodesh babayis hashabono Shlomo ben David." Give place to Aaron Kodesh in that home, in that structure that Shlomo built, Shlomo ben David Melech Yisrael. And he said to them, while now ein lochem maseh bekosif ato, now there is no load that you're supposed to carry on the shoulder. Ivdus Hashem elekecha b'goymer. So go ahead and serve Hashem without that avodah. There's no point. There's no orin. There's no carrying bakosov. Benignas imay mata arin v'chulu. Along with the orin was hidden the staff of Aaron. V'chol elu loy chozru b'bayis sheni. So this was in Yeshayahu in the time of the first Beis Hamikdash. But all of these items, the Oren and Aaron's staff, were not returned. They did not come back. So in the second Beis Hamikdash, the Oren did not come back to the place, and neither did the Mata Aaron. Ba'af Urim v'Tumim shahoyu b'bayis sheni, and also the Urim v'Tumim that were in the second Beis Hamikdash. So even though the garments of the Kohen Gadol had the breastplate, the Choshen, so it also had the Urim v'Tumim in the second Beis Hamikdash. But Lo Hoyim Meshivim Beruch HaKodesh Chulu, they would not respond Beruch HaKodesh. It wasn't functioning as an Urim v'Tumim, as being able to give answers through the Urim v'Tumim. That's the Lashon of the Rambam. So we have here a whole big explanation, and the Mefarshim want to know, why is this Negeya Lahaloch? Darf men verstehen, so we need to understand, the Mefarshim fragen, as the commentators ask, Lemay nafkemina lahalocha de ganze arichus v'sipur hadvorim. What difference does it make in halacha, the entire lengthy relating these matters, what took place? Vu, how, uviazoi, and where and how, where in the depth under the Beis Hamikdash, how it was done by Yeshayahu. No, that means durch Vemen it was done. So where, and then how they later on came to hide it, and who's the one that hid it? Because we don't just tell you the story of Yeshayahu, but it just tells you how this whole thing it took place, and it also says you who's the one that did that. It was Yeshayahu. So, okay, so why is this Vemer der Oren ist Enigmas geworden? Wo und wie Azoi und durch Vemer der Oren ist Enigmas geworden? Where and how and through whom the Oren was hidden? What difference does it make in Allah? Divrei HaRambam Sifra Yad HaChazoke, the words of the Rambam in his Sefer Yad HaChazoke and the Mishnah Torah, Zainen doch lehalocha amurim. They are said for halacha. Udvorim she'ein yoytze mehen din mahadinim. And if there is items which no law comes out of them from the laws, v'loy musar v'anhoga v'yediya tzricha, and not a lesson, not a conduct, not something that we need to know. It's not his custom from the Rambam to deal with them, to deal with those matters in this publication. In the Rambam, he doesn't deal with them. So why does the Rambam bring us all of these details? Very powerful question. The Rebbe will explain later on that this explains to us basically that the Mishkan, the Mikdash, the first Beis HaMikdash, Lichatchila, was built in a way that you can place these two spaces that were built. As we will see, I don't want to give it away the whole answer, but just that's the idea the Rebbe is going to bring out of here. Nochmer. Further, the Rebbe says, der Inyan vi azoy, vi is der Oren Nigmas geworden. This idea, how and where the Oren was hidden, is not something, is b'machloikes shnuya. This is really a machloikes about it. Because there is an opinion, actually, that the Oren did end up in exile in Babel. Over there, the Gemara brings down the whole discussion. And in the Gemara in Yoma. So, Vos is the Rambam Machriya K'divrei Ha'echad. So why does the Rambam have to decide like the opinion that says that the Oren was hidden? V'bald as der inyan is l'chayre nit negei l'dina, since this idea is seemingly, it's not important for any halacha. So why does the Rambam have to tell us about the whole ideas about what was built and that the Oren was put over there, and why is that negate? What comes out of halacha? So mefarshim, the Yavitz, verantworten, as tzedek godli yesh l'Rabbeinu bedover zeh lefi shetofas lo lekamon perik vov mehilchus halolu. In the Hilchus Beis HaBechira, says the Rambam, the Yavitz says that the Rambam had a great need in this matter, because we know what the view of the Rambam that he holds later on in the Hilchus Beis HaBechira, that the Beis HaMikdash remains in its Kedusha even after the destruction. The Rambam wants to go, this explains the Yavitz, according to you saying that the Beis HaMikdash has Kedusha. So how is there Kedusha if there's no more structure? So there's no Kedusha l'cheira. So the Rambam's answer is, says the Yavitz, that's what the Rambam has to write, that no, there is still Kedusha there because the Oren is still there. Lefi shetofas lo lekamon beperik vov malochas halolu. In Perik Vov Milchus Beis HaBechira, he says Shekadusha Sabayis Lohi Botlo, that the sanctity of the Beis HaMikdash has not been stopped; it continues. The Sova Rabbeinu, the Achmilsa, the Kedusha Sabayis Lebotlo, the Rambam Rabbeinu, he holds that this idea that the sanctity of the house of the Beis HaMikdash has not stopped. Oslo command the Svirulei Oren b'Mekoim Enignos. This goes according to the man the Omar, like the one command the Svirulei, like the one who holds that Oren b'Mekoim Enignos, and that's why there's a kedusha there even after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. Ba'al kol ponim le'inyan bias migdash mistabra. At least with regards to the idea whether you can go into the Migdash, there's one thing about that the whole Kedusha wasn't bottled, it's still there, but the prohibition against entering the Beis HaMikdash, it is mistabra de B'Italia. It is logical that it depends where the Aron was hidden. The Hokesiv, Because the pasuk says that you're not allowed to go into the Beis Hamikdash. It says me Beis the Parechas and the El Pnei HaKaperes Chulu, inside of the curtain and facing the Kaperes, which is the lid on the Aron. But if there's no Aron, there's no lid. So why is there a Isser of Bias Hamikdash? So we have to say, when the Rambam says that it's Osur, Kedushas Habayis Leibotlo, is because there is still a Beis Aaron on the bottom, hidden in the Beis Hamikdash. That's the way the Yavitz explains. Aber tzorich in dem tirutz. But this answer, the Rebbe says, we need to understand this answer. First of all, the Rebbe says that the Rambam himself says the reason why Kedusha Rishono is Kitcha Leibotlo, that didn't stop. He says because while there was a destruction in the Beis Hamikdash, in the wood, in the stone, in the building of the Beis Hamikdash, but the Kedusha, nothing happened to it. So besides that, the Rebbe says, if the Rambam means to say, and to answer, he didn't have to go in through this whole arichas. Let's look inside. But we need to really understand this answer. While Noisef Loze, in addition to the fact was that Rambam Alain is Mevayr time. The Rambam himself, he gives his reason. Parvos kocha l'shaita v'kocha l'osid lo, kitcha l'shaita v'kitcha l'osid love. Why was it holy for the time that there was the Beis Hamikdash, and also for the future after the Churban Beis? Is lefishe kedushas Hamikdash v'Yerushalayim, because the sanctity of the Mikdash and Yerushalayim mipnei Shechina. What brings their sanctity, the holiness, is the Shechina. U'Shechina in the Betela, the Shechina does not cease. So with the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, there was no stop to the sanctity of the Beis Hamikdash, and therefore it continues. So the Rambam writes the reason. But in them is l'cheira nit negei davke der mokem ha'ore. For all this, it's not important specifically the place of the Aron, that it's still there. The Shechina is in the place where the Beis Hamikdash was and the Kodesh HaKadoshim. But so, in order for the Rambam to say what he says later on, that the Kedusha remains, he doesn't have to explain it with the Mokem HaOren, because it's nothing to do with that. The Rambam writes it has to do with the Kedusha. The Kedusha of the Shechina, and the Kedusha of the Shechina remains. But besides this, if that was the Rambam gedarf zognem bekitzur beferish, he should have said briefly and very clearly, as Orein b'mekoymoi nignas, that the Orein was hidden in its place, to say that there's still an Orein in its place. But the Rambam, and the Rebbe is going to show how all the languages that the Rambam uses over here, exactly all the lengthy languages, would not be necessary for the Rambam just to bring out his point that the Aron remained over there, and that's why there's still a Kedusha over there. He should have said Aron b'mekayim. But the Rambam is, now look what the Rambam writes. Aleph, he writes Soisa. He doesn't say where, that it was in the Kodesh HaKadoshim or it was in the rest of the Mizbech. He says, Boina boy, bona boy, in it. Mokim lignes by Aron, in a place to hide Aron. Now, does he mean he built boy in the Beis HaMikdash, or specifically within the Beis HaMikdash, bona boy, in the Kodesh HaKadoshim? When you learn it just on the surface, was we can learn, and as the word boy, you could interpret, you could learn that when it says boy, but tzitzich zum bayis, that is referencing the structure, the whole Beis Hamikdash. Vos steht gleich vor dem. That's written before them. Is talking about the bayis, not the Kodesh HaKadosh. So bona boy means in the bayis. Und nicht zum Kodesh HaKadoshim lifnei von, and not to the Kodesh HaKadoshim, which the Rambam says before he says the bais. Kumtois. So then it turns out, as a ikir chosim and a sefer, the way the Rambam writes it, the main point he's trying to tell us is that the Mikdash remains, the Kodesh HaKadoshim remains the Kedusha there because it was Nignas, the Aron was Nignas there, and it's in the words of the Rambam, is not the main thing, is lacking from what is written down. It's not what it says. That inyan von Aron b'mekoyim Nignas, the fact that the Aron was in its place, the place of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and that it still continues to keep the Kedusha of the, because it's in the place of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, it's not in the words over here. That's not emphasized in the words of the Rambam. The Rambam says, well, in the Beis Hamikdash there was, but to say that the Kedusha of the Beis Hamikdash, we need to emphasize that it's boy in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. But in the Rambam's words, we don't find that. And number two, Beis. And the Rambam omits a pasuk brought in the Gemara, which tells us about that the Aron is on the same spot where it was supposed to be the kedusha and in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and he brings it from a pasuk, but the Rambam doesn't bring it. Er bringt nicht der Roiv dem pasuk. He does not bring the verse on this to prove this. Was wird gebracht in Gemara, which is brought down in the Gemara. By he shom ad hayom hazeh, that it was still till this day, that the Aron is there till today, which emphasizes, this emphasizes that Aron gefindt sich euch itz b'mekoyim, that even now it's in its place. That would be the Kedusha, that is important to us, because, as the Rebbe points out in the Ha'ara, because the Yavitz wants to say, why do we have a prohibition now to enter into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, is because the Aron is there now. So why does the Rambam not bring down the pasuk which emphasizes, as the Aron gefindt sich euch itz im Koimeh, that also now it's in this place? But number three, the Rebbe says, why do we need to know exactly who is the one that was Yeshiyahu that hid the Aron? V'ikar. Das verantwortet den ganzen nicht, for was der Rambam bringt, the day. Why does he bring down the opinion? As Yeshiyahu had goodness given them Aron, that Yeshiyahu is the one that hid the Aron. But this is klal nit negel ha'inyan. This is at all. It's not important to our subject. Tzid Aron is b'mekoyim nignas. Whether the Aron was hidden in its place where the Mokum HaMikdash in the Oder in Lishkas Eitzim, or was hidden in the room of the wood. Because even according to the opinion that it didn't go, it wasn't exiled to Bavel, there is still two opinions in the Gemara in Yoma, where exactly was it hidden? Was it in the Mekoimoi, in the place under the Kodesh HaKadoshim, or it was in the Lishkas Ha'etzim? Now, the Rebbe brings down in the Ha'ara that according to the Yavitz, it's important to say B'mekoimoi Nignas, because he's trying to explain why you can't go in today in the Beis Laparoitas, and specifically in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, because the Kedusha is still over there. But if we're learning just the Rambam, and there's also a whole big discussion over here in the Ha'ara whether, according to the Rambam, that it was hidden, according to the Manda Omar, that the Mekoimoi Nignas, maybe they found it later. Some Mefarshim say that they Taka hid it, but they found it later. And it did go to Bavel, so that it doesn't really reject the opinion that says that it was hidden there. Doesn't mean that it didn't go end up in Bavel later on. But The Rebbe says the Rambam's Lashon is not mashma. We'll leave this more for another further insight in the Haaretz, very gewaldige additional points, but we'll try to cover just the main Sikha and see how the Rebbe fits all these things together. So, why is the Rambam writing all this? There's something else over here. The Rebbe pointing all these questions. Daled, Nochmer, and even more. In the Beidin Yonim, in these two matters, Benegeya the Mokim Genizas Ha'orin, where the place where it was hidden. Veres Hotim Genizgan, who hid him, the Rambam writes very, very detailed. And the Rebbe is going to bring out all the details that the Rambam writes here. And this question, what is it needed? This all is going to point to something is more here. What is the Rambam says? Many of the details. Aleph, he says, Ashloime HaMelech had geboit dem Ort, wo zu goyne sein dem Oren. That it was King Shloime who built the place where to hide the ark. Why do we need to know that Shloime built it? There was a place to hide the ark. Base number 2, he says, as der mokim is given lamato b'matmoniyos amukos v'akalkolis, the lengthy space where it was hidden, it was below in the hiding deep roundabout place underneath. And Gimel, and number 3, then the Rambam says, as Yeshio HaMelech Tziva v'gonze. The emphasis is here that it was the king Yeshio, which the Rebbe will bring out in his answer, is the one that instructed and hid it. Nitztam gonze, doesn't say that it was Yeshio gonze. Why does it have to say Yeshio HaMelech Tziva v'gonze? And also, it doesn't just say gonze, it says as the gonze b'mokim shemona shloima. He again has to emphasize that he hid it in the place that Shlomo built. It doesn't say nidve gonze sham. Hey, I bring the Reifaraya from Pasuk. And the Rambam quotes here the Pasuk as the Rebbe brings down by Yomer Lelevim Hamevinim L'Chol Yisrael, that whole Pasuk over there. Why is that important? Under Tzu Vav, not only does he bring the Pasuk, but also the Tzu Maitik from Pasuk Oich Diverten. He also quotes the full Pasuk with the words La Levim Hamevinim L'Chol Yisrael Akdeshim La Hashem, to the Levim that understand, to all the Yisrael that are holy to Hashem. Ben David Melech Yisrael Ein Lachem Maseh Bi Kosef Ato Ibdus Shem L'Keich Go. There is no work by the shoulder carrying, go serve Hashem. Those are not details, or those are not important to the proof as Yeshua Melech Tziva v'Gonze b'mokim shebona shleima, that King Yeshua instructed to hide it in mokim shebona shleima. That whole part, the beginning of the pasuk of La Levim, is not important. It should just says, "Vayomer." The important part is that he said to him, "Tnuas arna kodesh bebayis asher bona shloimah," that they should put him over there. But this whole other ariches of the Levim, this doesn't seem to have any place to the proof as Yeshua Melech Tziva Gozem Makom Shebona Shloimeh. The only part which we know is that you should place it in the place that Shloimeh built. What is the nafkus ledina for the Allah Prat Manal? What difference is there in halacha from all of these details? So besides the Rambam, the Rebbe asking on the Yavitz's interpretation, that Bichlal, we don't need, the Rambam doesn't need to explain why the Kedusha Rishoina is Nimshechas, that it's Leibotlo, is because there is the Arin underneath there, and that's why we're not allowed to go in today. The Rambam doesn't need to explain that because the Rambam explains it. The reason is because the sanctity, the Shekhinah never left there, even after the destruction, so you can't go there. It's Leibotla because the divine presence still is in the Beis Hamikdash, in the Kodesh HaKadosh. But even according to the Yavitz, the wording of the Rambam that Rebbe brings down doesn't point to the explanation that the Yavitz says from the Pasuk, from the wording that the Rambam brings down and from the Rambam's bring down. And we don't see this clearly that it wasn't the Mokem Hamikdash from the Pasuk, and he omits the Pasuk, and all the extra details that the Rebbe brings down that we find in the Rambam bringing down means that there's something different over here in the Rambam. And now the Rebbe asks another side question, which is basically also going to be explain to us what's going on over here. In the language of the Rambam, it seems almost like Shlomo HaMelech, because he knew that there was going to be a Churban, so he built sort of an escape route. It's almost mashma that he built the escape route on his own. This was his idea. And this doesn't fit with what we know, that all details of the Beis Hamikdash were built. Shlomo says, Meis Havayela Hiskil. Hashem gave him the insight what to do. How come this built it by himself? Euch Gimel, euch darf man verstehen alle from Pashtus, Loshna Rambam, from the simple language that Rambam uses, V'yod asher soifer l'chorev. He knew that its end it's going to be destroyed. And therefore, Bono boy Mokoim, so he built there a place. Is mashma, it appears, it's understood. Ashloimo the Mokoim in Beis Hamikdash geboit medas atzmei, that Shlomo built that place, that space in the Beis Hamikdash on his own. Because he knew that at the end it's going to be destroyed. Is Tamua, so it's surprising. All the parts and the details of the structure have been built by the instruction of Hashem. As the Pasuk says, Hakoil biksav miyad havaya olai hiskil, that everything that was written about how the Beis Hamikdash is all miyad havaya. It comes from Hashem, that Eibishter olai hiskil gave me the idea, basically, that everything in the Beis Hamikdash comes from Hashem. Is vikumtes? How come Shlomo zol tzubo in Hamokim? How could he add built up a place in Beis Hamikdash with das atzmei, to build a place in the Beis Hamikdash on his own? Little surprising. And the other surprise is when the Rambam finishes up with the Urim V'Tumim. What's the connection of the Urim V'Tumim over here when we're talking about the Urim base? Boss is the Rambam Nesayim Hanal. Why does the Rambam conclude the above? Ubarichas, and at length, Benegeya Urim V'Tumim V'Vayis Sheni, as it relates to the Urim V'Tumim in the second Beis Hamikdash. L'cheira, Emes Take the Urim V'Tumim Hobun Atzad Hashove Midem Vos L'Chosur V'Vayis Sheni. Let it be true, yes, it's true, that the Urim V'Tumim have a common denominator with the Urim, because they both had not returned during the second Beis Hamikdash. Aber der ganze Inyan von Urim V'Tumim, but the entire idea of the Urim V'Tumim gehert nicht zu Hilchos Beis HaBechira, that does not belong in the laws of the Beis HaBechira, the chosen house, about the Beis HaMikdash, nor to Big Day Kuna, that has connected to the garments of the Kuna. Bos Mekoimom, where is the place? Is in Hilchos Klei HaMikdash Va'avdim Bay. There's special halachas that talks about the vessels of the Mikdash and those who serve in it. And over there, we have to tell you that what happens with the Urim V'Tumim, which was one of the vessels of the Beis HaMikdash. And the Rambam bringt das Tage dort. And the Rambam brings it down over there. Was bringt der Rambam dem Inyan do in Hilchos Beis HaBechira? Why does the Rambam bring this Urim V'Tumim that they weren't there? He brings it down in Beis HaBechira. Muzman Zogan. So therefore we need to say, this tells us, as the Sheiches von Urim V'Tumim zum Oren is nicht nur in them, it's not just in the fact that they both didn't come back in the Bayis Sheni, nor ze haben a Sheiches zum Etzem ha'inyan von zum Etzem Inyan Oren. They have a connection to the concept of the Oren. Time wird es gebracht in Hilchos Beis HaBechira zusammen mit den Dine Oren. For that reason, they are brought together with the halachas of the Oren. The Rebbe will explain that the Oren was not just a vessel like the other vessels in the Beis HaMikdash, but in the Beis HaMikdash, but actually the Oren was part of the building of the Kodesh HaKadosh. It's the Bayis Kodesh HaKadosh. And when we say Lechozru Bebayis Sheni, means, but the Kedusha, the house, the Kodesh HaKadoshim, even though that they weren't there anymore, the Oren, but yet the structure is still there, and the same is true with regards to the Urim V'Tumim, as the Rebbe will explain. Dalet. So, first the Rebbe is going to point out the places where the Rambam talks about the halachas of the Oren. The Rambam talks about first, in the beginning, he talks about the vessels of the Mishkan. Perek Dalet talks about the structure of the Mishkan. The Oren, he explains, after talking about the structure of the Mishkan, he talks about the Oren. Oren seems to be part of the vessels of the Mishkan, the Kliya Mishkan. That should belong in the first Perek. Why does the Rambam explain this at the end, after in Perek Dalet, when he talks about the actual structure? And the Rebbe will explain that the Oren is part of the structure of the Mishkan, not just like the other Kelim. Dalet, vet men dos verstehen, will understand it by pointing out a precise in the Rambam, benegei dem ort, precisely the place where the dozike halacha state in the Rambam, where this halacha is stated in the Rambam. In Onev Hilchos Beis HaBechira zog the Rambam. In the beginning of Beis HaBechira, the Rambam says, Elu hein hadvorim she'meikir bebinyan habayis. The following are the items that are main in the structure. What does the Beis HaMikdash look like? What is this? It says Oisim be Kodesh HaKadoshim. It has the Kodesh and the Holy of Holiest, and then Ulam Chulu, the room that leads up to the Kodesh. Well, the Noch Zokter, that's the first step. That's the structure. The Nochdem Zokter, Oisim be Mikdash Kelim v'Chulu, and you make in the Kelim, in the Mikdash, you make vessels. It counts all the vessels. Und rechnet ois the clay hamigdash and mekoimam. He enumerates the vessels of the mikdash and the place where they are stationed. within the Migdash, within the structure. In the Baita Dike Prokim, Perik Beis Gimel, and then after Perik Aleph in Perik Beis and Gimel, chapter 2 and 3 is the Rambam Mevayir Tzuras Hakilim. Rambam explains the shape of these vessels. When in Perik Revi, in the first chapter, he Mevayir Tzuras Habayis, the shape of the structure of the building. Koisle Habayis, the wall of the structure. Heichel, the room. Sha'orim, the gates, v'chulu, etc. Stellt sich the Shaila. So the question is, v'chulu, etc., meaning that this is all part. Stellt sich the Shaila, der Orim belangt lich eure zu Klei HaMikdash. The Orim belongs, would seem, to the vessel of the Mikdash. And wie passt da rein? So how does it fit the ariches in der halacha now wegen Gnisis Orin? So how does it fit this lengthy explanation in the halacha now about wegen Gnisis Orin that talks about how the Orin was hidden in Perik Revi, which is Tzuras Habayis? How does it fit? Why did the Rambam write it in the 4th chapter, which talks about the shape and how the structure, the building is supposed to look like? Why is he talking over there a big detail about the order? Is der Fun gedrungen, Gufa gedrungen? So from this itself, we can derive Ados was der Oren gefindt sich in Kodesh HaKadoshim. That the fact that the Oren finds itself in Kodesh HaKadoshim is Ledas HaRambam a prat from Tzuras Habayis. According to the view of the Rambam, that's a detail, that's part of the house, that's part of the structure. That Oren is nit nor a kli, it's not just a vessel, was gefindt sich in Kodesh Kadoshim, which finds itself in the Kodesh Kadoshim. Al derech with the andere Kli HaMikdash, welche gefinden sich in Heichel v'chulu, similar to the other vessels of the Mikdash, which are in the Heichel, in the Kodesh. So we don't say that the same thing is the Oren in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the other vessels in the Heichel, and this is the Kodesh HaKadoshim. No, it's not the same thing. No, it is a tale from the Kodesh HaKadoshim, Binyan Atzme, he is part of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, he's part of the structure, he's part of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Bald as der Oren macht dem Beis HaMikdash for Abayis laHavaye, that makes the structure a home for Hashem, the Oren, and therefore that's part of the Bais. As the Pasuk says, over there, over Mibena Krum, in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So that is why, that is where the house is made up. The house is made up with the Oren. Underneath is Musbar. This also explains was the Rambam Rechat Nidam Oren, why the Rambam does not count the Oren zwischen the Klei HaMikdash, was is mefaret in halacha now. The Rambam explains details the vessels of the Mikdash in the first beginning, in the first Perek in Beis HaBechira, and he doesn't mention about the Oren in Onei Vilchus Beis HaBechira. He says, make the Mikdash Kelim v'chulu, and he doesn't say about the Oren. The Oren, where's the Oren? Well, that Oren is nit came kli bifnei atzme, because the Oren isn't an independent keli. She's a tail from Kodesh HaKadoshim. It's a part of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So that would bring us to a big surprise. So if the whole structure depends upon the Orin, the Ne'aditi L'cho, that is part of the structure, and since in the Beis HaMikdash there was no Orin, how could there be a Beis HaMikdash without an Orin if the whole sanctity comes from the Orin? That's why we have to say that it was hidden, so that sanctity is still there. Based on this, there's a big surprise. Like them, and according to this, it would turn out as in Bayis Sheni, that in the second Beis HaMikdash, Was dort hat sich der Oren nicht gefunden, bim Koime, in which the Oren did not find itself in its place, which was on the stone in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, is the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So then the Holy of Holies, from welchen der Oren is a chelik. Part of it is the Oren, is a part of it, nicht gewinn bishlei Musay. So it wasn't really complete because there was no Oren there. Das heißt, which means that the Bayis Sheni had gefällt, that would mean that in the second base of Mikdash there was missing, nicht nur a prat, not just a detail. Nor einer von the Dvorim was seinen Aiker bebinyan abayis, but one of the items which were a main in destruction of the building. The Rambam says you need a kodesh rahechel. The kodesh hakadoshim. That's the Iker bebinyan abayis. And here we don't have the kodesh hakadoshim because we don't have the kodesh hakadoshim because we don't have the order. Bring the Rambam the ganze Arichus in order to remove this surprise. This is not something which is not understood. The Rambam brings down the whole lengthy explanation about the hiding of the Or. Was der Mitwert verstandig? With this we understand as euch bebayis sheni hat nit gefällt bebein abayis. Now we understand how also in the second Beis Hamikdash there wasn't really missing anything in the structure of the house. Hey, the biur was the explanation of this. Those was the Rambam zogt that when the Rambam says ubeis shebono shloime sabayis chulu bono by mokum lignes by ha'orim, when he built the home, he built a place to hide the Oren. But the Rambam wants to tell you that this is part of the original building of Shlomo HaMelech, that there is a place, there's two places. You either put it inside, on top, inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim, or Shlomo built another place for it to stay, which would be the Matmonis HaKalos underneath. What is the Rambam's intention? Not to decide wo the Oren is nignas geworden. This is meant to say where the Oren was hidden. Whether it was in the Lishka Sa'itzim or it was in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Because this, what happened. Why would that be important? But what is coming is to give us the novel halacha in the building of the Beis Hamikdash, that there is another halacha in the building of the Beis Hamikdash. The Gnizas HaOren is not nor an inyan fun b'diavad v'leis bereira. When the Oren was hidden, is not just a matter of, okay, after the fact, we have no choice. They destroying the Beis Hamikdash, we need to hide, so we're going to use the hideout for destruction. No. Nor beim binyan habayis, but when they built the house, is milachatchila ausgestellt geworden. It was set up in such a way to begin with, as that Oren zol ki'ilu haben zwei mekoymes in Beis Hamikdash. The Oren, so to say, should as if to say that we have two spaces in the Beis Hamikdash. Aleph, number one, it has a mokim goli, an open space. Of them even shisiya bekodesh hakadoshim, on that special stone, the stone from which the world was created, the even shisiya, which was in the kodesh hakadoshim, that was an open place that you can see. He has another place, Beis Amokim to go in Zainim, a place to hide him, Lamato, below Kodesh HaKadoshim, below the Kodesh HaKadoshim, Bemat Muniyos Amukis Va'akalkolis, in deep, hidden, roundabout way. Oich der Ort is Melachatchila Chelik from the Beis. Also, that space is to begin with. It's a part of the Beis Hamikdash, part of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. It's part of the whole structure. They built a mikdash with a pace underneath. Das heißt, which means the Geniza Sa'oren is nicht kein Inyan Neusab Eufen Beis Hamikdash. Hiding the Oren is not an additional matter on top of the building of the Beis Hamikdash. Was is getan geworden, which was done kedei to an order b'shas mat gedar when you needed behalten verhitten am Oren when we needed to protect the Oren. That's why there's something new that came up. So there's something new. No. No, this is adin in being abayis. This is part. Building of the bayis consists of building that hideout. That's part of the structure. This is adin in being abayis. This is a din in the building of the house. Kishem vitzulib shleimus hamigdosh mus gebuit werden. Amokim kodesh kadoshim. Just as in order to have a full Beis Hamikdash, you need to have the space the kodesh kadoshim does the conditions. There's another space that needs to be there for the structure. Where the Oren should stand in an open way. Likewise, the Beis Hamikdash also needs a place for hiding in Kodesh HaKadoshim, in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, to put it away. Even though the Rebbe points out in the order here that even though say has a place, but here the Rebbe says clearly the Mokum Geniza, according to the Rebbe's shot, is in Kodesh HaKadoshim. Even though before he said it's possibly either way, but the Rebbe says that since we're talking about here the structure of the Beis Hamikdash, and we're talking about the Kodesh HaKadoshim before, so it's understood that the boy means not in Lishkas Ha'etzim or else it means mamash underneath. Fardamoren. Und damit wird bewahren die Nitzvies von Kodesh HaKadoshim. And this way, we are also protecting the eternity of Kodesh HaKadoshim. Hayois as der Oren is a chelik ikri from Kodesh HaKadoshim. Since it's a main part of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, so therefore we are preserving the integrity of the Kodesh HaKadoshim by keeping that main part intact. Good now, as I said before. So, what does the Rambam mean when he says it's not like Shlomo HaMelech decided to build that? Here the Rebbe is saying that this was all the plan, this is all part of the building. That's the whole point here. So what does the Rambam mean? Und das ist der Pirush von Divrei Rambam, and this is the meaning when the Rambam says, Ubeis shebono Shlomo v'yoda shesoifa lichorev bono b'mokoim. Not like we wanted to learn before. He found out, and he found out later, and therefore an escape route. No. He built it lechatchila. Nit Shlomo gebayt the mokum et as atzmai. This doesn't mean that Shlomo built it on his own for an escape. Chas v'shalom. Not hat beim Buing gemusst wissen, but it was important that when Shlomo built the Beis Hamikdash, he need to know as Yechorev that it will be destroyed. Und he was instructed. Everything was by Hashem. And he built that place of Geniza. It's not his decision. But he knew about it when he was building. Not that he decided that Oren darf sich dort gefinden in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. The Oren needs to be in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Is when Shlomo will stam ausgegraben amokim lamato. If, without having prepared this place, he would have just dug a space below the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Al pi tzivui. Without having Hashem tell him that it's going to be Yechorav, not wissing the tachlis, therefore not knowing that this is a place to put it away. Wollt euch gekommen, But then it would turn out as Be'ez HaBinyan that in the time of the building is der Mokim nicht niskadish geworden, als Mokim l'Kedushas Oren and Kodesh Kadoshim, that it would not have been sanctified as a place for the sanctity of the Oren in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, because the purpose wasn't known, so you couldn't sanctify it for that. You just made a pit for some reason. Is the Rambam Madgish, that's what the Rambam emphasizes. He knew that in the end it's going to be destroyed. And therefore, and therefore he built in it, in the Beis Hamikdash, a place so that he can hide on it. To begin with, he built a place in which he can hide the Oren. The Rambam is madgish as es is given a mokim mas im lignizo, that it was a mokim, it was fit for geniza. That's why lemato b'matmunis amokos v'akalkalis, to beginning to where it was appropriate space for a geniza. So he's building a geniza place for the Oren at the same time. He's building the Kodesh HaKadoshim for the open space for it. The Mele move on as Mekadesh given, so it's understood that he sanctified it al smokim ha'oren as a place for the oren, Mele atil for the Kodesh Kadoshim, and therefore it became a part that is a part of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Next Bob, the Rebbe is going to explain that now we can understand the whole arichas of the Rambam with that Yeshio hid this, because we're talking about another place for the Orin to be, and this was not done in the days of Yeshio. He was the king. The Yidden weren't yet by the Churban, and it was placed through a king in its place, and by the Kohanim, and there was a continuous avodah. This all shows us that putting it over there is part of the places in which the Oren can be put. Also can understand according to this, then Tam was the Rambam is Mamshikul Moisuf. That the Rambam continues and he adds as Yeshio Hamelech Tzivo V'Gonzoi B'Mokim Shabon Shlema. So Arichas Yeshio, the king, he instructed, and they hit it, and again, b'mokim shabon shleima, not shom, but b'mokim shabon shleima, all trying to tell us that this is a place where the Oren belongs. Kedei nochmer zu meichiach zayin, in order to prove even more. As genizas Oren b'mokim zeh, that the hiding the Oren in that place is not an inyan fum b'diavad. It's not a matter of after the fact. There's nowhere to. What are we going to do with the Oren? We're going to hide it. Nor is givem lachatchila oisgestalt. This was set up from the beginning. As those zayin mekoimoi hagonus shala Oren. This is the place where the Oren is hidden. Al satel from Kodesh Hakadoshim, being a part of the Kodesh Hakadoshim. That's where it is put away. Is the Rambam Mevayer, so the Rambam explains as the way it actually took place is vorgekommen nicht be'ez hachorban, not during the time of the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. There's man from B'diavad. When it was after the fact, nor be'ez the Beis Hamikdash is nicht given b'sakona klal. At a time that the Beis Hamikdash was not in danger at all. Ki yedu, as it's known, Teikev Yad Yisrael, the power and the force, the strength of the Jewish people, Bisman Yoshio, during the times of Yoshio. Was noch mehr, and which even more, not only is it Yoshio, but this was a king, the entering the Oren to the place where it's supposed to be hidden is given al derech ume'ein. This was similar and somewhat of similar and somewhat of the way the Oren was brought into the Kodesh HaKadoshim by Shlomo. And these are all the details. Aleph, number one, It's Yoshio Hamelech. Talk about King Yoshio. Is given there was he was the one Tziva Legonza. He is the one that instructed to hide it. Al derech viach nasos lekodesh hakadoshim al yidei shloim Melech, which is similar. That when it was brought into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, it took place through King Shlomo. Here it was brought into its hiding place through King Yeshio. Beis Dachnosis gefidur geworden durch. Who brought it in? Is Halvim Hamevinim L'chol Yisrael HaKadoshim Lahavaya. It's specifically the Levim, who are the Mevinim for all the Yidden. And these Levim are Kadoshim LaHashem, and as the Rebbe says in the note here, over here, we're actually talking about the Rebbe points out in the Hor that the Levim over here has to mean the Kohanim, because he says, while they don't have the service lekatev, and the service lekatev was done by the Kohanim, because in this case specifically, when they had to bring it into the Beis Hamikdash. So, in any event, this was accomplished the same like by the time when they brought in by Shlomo Melech, it was brought in into the Kodesh HaKadoshim through the Kohanim. Al derech by Shlomo, it was vayaviu HaKohanim esarim bris Hashem el mekoymei. That the Kohanim brought the ark, the covenant of Hashem, into its place. So here too, the Levim, which means the Kohanim in this case, as the Rebbe explains, discusses in the Pasuk in Hora 35. When the far is der Pasuk Medaye zu sagen dem Loschen Tnu. And that's why the Pasuk says specifically the language place, as Orna Kodesh. Babayi is place in the house Asher Bona Shloim that Shloim built. This is the bayis, give it into the house. Is nit a peula von siluk unetilas orin mimkoyme. It's not an act of removal and taking the orin away from its place. Nor verkehrt, but on the other, just the opposite. As is nisina bebayis, you're putting it into the house now. You're putting it into its place, into its hiding in the place which is destined for hiding place. The far bring the Rambam Erdem Sima Kosuf. And now we explain why the Rambam brings the end of the pasuk. Ein lochem masev bekosif ato. You don't have that work of the shoulder now to bring it in, to carry the orin. Ivdu as Hashem elekeichem goimer, serve Hashem God. Which means to say that Chodj der orin vet von jetzt on sein in a matze von Geniza, although the orin from that point on is going to be in a situation that is going to be hidden. You don't have the efsharius. You don't have the possibility for Masabekotiv to carrying it on the shoulder. Is as obernitas is do eats tachisoren in the Avodah of Beis Hamikdash. That doesn't mean that right now there is lacking anything in the service of Beis Hamikdash. Ivdu as Hashem, we still continue, notwithstanding that there is no Avodah Bakotim. But Ivdu Hashem Elekechem Goimer in Beis Hamikdash, serve Hashem in the Beis Hamikdash. But durch them felt nit in Binyan Habayis, because through the removal of it from the open into the Mokim Hagniza, there's nothing really lacking in the actual Binyan Habayis, and therefore go ahead and continue the service. And this is also what was with the Urim V'Tumim. According to the Rambam, the Urim V'Tumim were there in the Sheni. It was once in the Beis Hamikdash Hasheni, and it was part of the Shmoyne Begodim that the Kohen Gadol had, and yet it didn't have. It has a similar idea, even though Begilui there was no Urim V'Tumim didn't speak to them Beruch Hakodesh. But still, it was there. The same thing in the Beis Hamikdash. That's why the Rambam brings the equation. Look this as side. Zayin apikol analvet benut verstehen based on all the above, we'll also understand was that Rambam is Messiah the halacha. That the Rambam concludes with the halacha, this halacha with the Arichus going into length when Urim V'Tumim Bisman Bayisheni about the Urim V'Tumim during the second Beis Hamikdash. The Rambam bringt a Dugma zu dem, was sagt in Chilas halacha wegen Urim. The Rambam is bringing as example to this which he said in the beginning of the halacha with regards to the Urim. As euch in Bayishen is given der Urim Bishleim was that also in the second Beis Hamikdash the Urim was there whole completely. Hainu bim koima, meaning it was in its place. Choch is given Ashinu Godel Begilui, notwithstanding the fact that openly there was a big change. Mehot es nit gizen in Beis Hamikdash. You didn't see it in the Beis Hamikdash, but it was in the Beis Hamikdash. As Azoi gefindt man euch benegeya Urim Vetumim Bayishen, you would find a similar kind of an idea with the Urim V'Tumim in the second Beis Hamikdash. The Urim V'Tumim l'das Rambam, according to the Rambam, the Urim V'Tumim zayne given b'shleim musom b'bayis sheni. They were there also in the second Beis Hamikdash. Chotsh is given ashinu godlu. Notwithstanding, it was also there was a tremendous change. Lohoyu mashirim, they did not respond. Motzei gehert, you couldn't hear them. Over you couldn't see the Urim. There you couldn't hear the Urim V'Tumim. As what gefällt Zeyer Gilui, it was lacking their revelation als Urim V'Tumim, as shining and lighting up the words of Hashem, Vidos is given by Yisrishan, as it was in the first Beis Hamikdash, aber ze seinen given Bishlei Musa, but yet they were still completely there. Und der Fahr wie der Rambam is Messiah. That's why as the Rambam concludes, haben sie Masten given dem Minyan Habegodim von Kohen Godel, they completed the 8 garments that the Kohen Gadol had to have. So Urim V'Tumim was there because the Urim was there. It's not like they weren't there; it was there. The same thing is with the Aron. The Aron is mashlim, makes the Makom HaMikdash, the Kodesh HaKadoshim remains in its holiness because the Aron is there. Now the Rebbe says it turns out that this actually ends up being an advantage also for the Beis Hamikdash Rishon. That the fact that the Beis Hamikdash Rishon, the Aron stayed, gave it a level of eternity, so that the Beis Hamikdash is never really completely destroyed, because some of it remained. Based on the above, it turns out that there is a novel idea over here and something wondrous. Not only as it relates to the complete advantage and holiness of the second Beis Hamikdash. Also ich damals hat man gehabt dem Kodesh HaKadoshim b'Shlei Musam and the Morim b'Mekoyme, that also in the Bayis Sheni we had the Kodesh HaKadoshim completely and the Aron was in place. Gone, but it's still in place. Nor der Midvet is gebracht, but we're actually also expressing, we're bringing out a Maila, an advantage, also in the sanctity of the first Beis Hamikdash. Afalpi as bichitzonius. Is there Bayis Rishon is given Kebein Bayis Binyan Nitzchi, even though externally the first Beis Hamikdash was not an eternal structure as it can sein und given. It was able to be, and it was the Churban Habayis, the destruction of Beis Hamikdash. Aber bepnimius is euch in ihm reingegeben geworden an Inyan von Nitzchi, but in an inner, also in the first Beis Hamikdash, it was put into it an aspect of eternity. Sees though in Bayis Rishon Amokim Geniza, in the first Beis Hamikdash there is a place which is the hiding. Was in is not given churban. Over there was no destruction. And the Aron is the Aron stays in its place till today's day. So this is something more than just saying that the kedusha remained over here. We have greater place. This is not only the place where the Shekhinah was, but this part of the structure is here, the binyan, because the Aron is an ikar in the binyan, and that's also remains. Those was kedusha rishayna kitcha l'shaita. The fact that the first sanctity remained Kodesh for the time that the Beis Hamikdash stood, and it was also continued the sanctity for the future to come. Das is mitzad kedushas hamokim. That's from the perspective of the sanctity of the place. The place never lost its holiness, because of the divine. But the Rambam Machadish Hatifranin, but here the Rambam comes up with even a deeper idea. As der binyan guf, that also the structure itself, hot in sich an inyan. There is an aspect, a chelik welcher is l'shait los love. There's a part of the actual Beis Hamikdash which is there presently and for the future. Der Kodesh Kodoshim is melachatchila gebeut geworden. It was from the start. It was built for the time and for the future, where the Oren will stay for the future time. It has a place that it's stored, that you hide it, you put it away there. And this actually ties all the three Bate Mikdash together. Test Pianal, but based on the above, there's a new depth in the Farbund from the drei Bate Mikdash, in the tie, the connection of the three Bate Mikdash. Es ist nicht as seinen drei besondere Bate Mikdash. It's not that there are three separate sanctuaries which have a connection to one another. Nor be ikir seinen sei ein bais. But mainly they're really one. There's one, only one. The Beis Hamikdash Hasheni v'chein hashlishi, the second Beis Hamikdash, and likewise the third one, is bechelik ikri, in a main part, that Oren nit kein nayer bayis, not a new structure. Nor der erster bayis, but it's that the first house werd gebuiti beranais. It's rebuilt. It's built again, but it's not a new. Showing in the binyan von ersten bayis, already in the building of the first Beis Hamikdash, is nikva geworden. It was set an inyan anai concept, l'shaito l'osid lovi, for the time, for the future. Canal nitzchi, you brought in that place. The gonus was made an eternal part, starting over there, which is nitzchi. The second and the third, all the Beis Hamikdash was in there already, right then and there. The Geniza built all these three Beis Hamikdash. I can say similar idea, that it's just a rebuild, not a new, is when we talk about the resurrection, the Tchias HaMesim of the dead. This main nicht as demut werden beschaffen werden in ganzen neue Gufen. Doesn't mean that then there will be created totally new bodies. Nor die Gufim werden aufgebaut werden von dem Etzem Luz, but rather these bodies will be rebuilt from that Etzem Luz. Because those is that Etzem Aguf shall lifneze. That's the essence of the body beforehand. Before the body was lost, there is still the essence is the Luz. In Welchens is the Chayach Ken Churban Hefsid, which doesn't apply in that part. There's no destruction, there's no loss over there. The luz remains. That's like the Oren, which is Gondos. And those is that Inyan from Bona, boy Mokim Lignes boy Ha-Oren. He built him a place to hide the Oren. Their Mokim Ha-Oren is that Etzem Iker Canal from the Beis Hamikdash. The place of the Oren is the essence, the main of the Beis Hamikdash. In Belchus is the Chaych in Churban Behefsud, which doesn't apply, no destruction, no loss. And from him, the Mikdash Hasheni Vashlishi, from that hidden place, that's where the Beis Hamikdash Hasheni Vashlishi are built from. Yud. The Halacha in Rambam bringt euch larois dvorim nefloyim and klolus inyan achurma ba'agolus. This brings out, this Halacha in Rambam brings out some wondrous matters in the general idea of the destruction and the exile. In the Beis Hamikdash mitzad atzmei, in the Beis Hamikdash from itself, Volt nit geken sein ken inyan shel churban. Could not possibly be such a whole idea of destruction. Goyim bekoyach atzmom, goyim with their own force, kenen nit haben chaz v'sholim ken shlita in the Beis Hamikdash, the Bayis Lashem. They cannot have any dominance, any rulership over the Beis Hamikdash, the house for Hashem. Das was bepoilot geken sein der churban habayis. The fact that actually there was able to be the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash is the far was in the Beis Hamikdash gufa be'ez binyonei. Is the reason for that is because the Beis Hamikdash itself, when you built it, is given an isinas mokoim un an efshorus of the churban. Part of the building of the Beis Hamikdash allowed, it gave room and a possibility of the churban. You built lachatchila inside of the Kodesh HaKadosh, a place to hide it when, so that means that the building was built for that. Similar as it relates to a general bayid. As a goy mitzad atzmei hot nit ken shlita of ayid. A goy on his own cannot dominate, cannot rule a Jew. Seiden, when der id durch meise v'poloisa git of them an ort, unless the Jew, through his actions, through what he does, he allows for that to happen, but on the self cannot rule him. Und noch mehr. It's not only that a goy cannot dominate a yid, but also distinguished based in Pamalia Shomailo, the Bezdin and the heavenly academy, the group of above, they, so to speak, do not have any dominance, rule over a yid. Under din was a paskin and if a yidden, and if they rule something on a yid, muss sein mit der Raskomme von dem Yidden, needs to be with the agreement of the yid. The Rebbe referenced Lakut Sichas in Chelek Dalet. Und das sagt der Rambam, and this the Rambam says, as those was es hat gekannt sein, the Churban Habayis. The reason that there could be a destruction of the Beis Hamikdash is weil Beis Shlomo hat gebaut der Mikdash, when he built the Mikdash, hat nicht bloß gewusst, not only that he knew that it was going to be destroyed, nor hat in dem Binyan Gufa reingetan, but he actually put in this building the Nisina Smokum of Churbonei to allow for this destruction. Bona by Mokum Lignis by Aron, he built in it a place to put away the Aron, which means he's building for the destruction. But what does it mean that here we're building something and we know already about the destruction? But that's because destruction is not just destruction, it really is a part of the elevation. Yudalu, but from them, Gufa. But from the fact itself was in the Zman from Binyan Beis HaMikdash. During the time when the Beis HaMikdash was built, with der ganzer Simchon Sturm, with the entire joy and the storm that took place, was his demol event that took place then. So why was Shlomo Melech thinking wegen dem Churban Habayis to know about the destruction? Und hat noch getan a Paula bekeshlo sein. He did an act. He built that Geniza, the Mokum Gonos, is move on. So it's understood as euch der Churban is be'emes negeya, that also the destruction is in truth. It connects and it's important und bringt zum Tachlis von Binyan Habayis, and that brings the goal of the building of the Beis Hamikdash, because we're celebrating building here, not destruction. The explanation is that Churban Habayis is not given to lieben Churban Atzmet chas v'sholom v'chas v'sholom. The destruction of the Beis Hamikdash was not for just destruction itself. God forbid, God forbid. Nor kidei azol durch dem zukommen an alin an, but rather that through the destruction they shall reach a greater elevation. Yerida tzerech aliyah, a descent for the purpose of an elevation. Bis zum binyan habayis hashlishi, till the building of the third Beis Hamikdash was vetzayin habayis nitzchi, which will be an eternal structure. Und demels wird sein die Schleimus in Beis Hamikdash, then it's going to be the wholesomeness in the structure and the building of the Beis Hamikdash. But es wird sein Binyan the Kutsha B'richu, it's going to be a building of Hashem. As the Pasuk says, Mikdash Adnai Kohen Lo Yodecha. The Mikdash of Hashem, Hashem's hands is made. Und das ist, was der Rambam sagt. That's why the Rambam, this is what Rambam says. Be'ez she'bona Shloime. When Shloime was building a Sabayis. Ubederech memela yoda she'sefer l'choref. Because since Shloime is the one that building it, he knows that my Sayyidei Adam, human being, create something is temporary. It's not going to last. Sefer l'choref. The Baals is binyona de Barnash. It's a building of a human being. Und der Farbonne bei Mokum liegen ist bei Chulu. That's why he built a place to hide it. Erot Melech hat Chila reingegeben in den Binyan. He, to begin with, he put into the structure the Nisinas Mokum Lechurban, the possibility for destruction. Kidei bezol der noch zukommen zu der Aliyah, so that through this you can reach the elevation durch the Yerida shel HaChurban from Bayis Shlisha. Through the Yerida of the Churban, you'll be able to get to the Aliyah of the Bayis Shlishi. Through the destruction of the Churban, so you'll get to the Aliyah from Bayis Shlishi. When der Inyan as der Sefer L'Chorev, and the idea that it is going to be destroyed is to leave the Aliyah Shalach. That's because of the elevation that follows it. Is Mudgesh in them Inyan Gufa Vashloim Od Giton. That's emphasized what Shlomo did, that there is an elevation that comes afterwards. The fact that he built a place in where he can hide the Oren. It has both extremes. Those vice, it points as the vice is azah, was it's gonna at the end it's gonna be destroyed, that you need to put away the Oren. Aber leidoch is the matorah from Beine Zayin dem Mokum Genizim. But on the other hand, so what's the purpose of building the hiding place to bavon and the nitzchias from the Orden of Beis Hamikdash, to caution and to protect the eternity of the Orden of Beis Hamikdash? That's why you're building it. Durch demot men bavon, through that you forewarned and cautioned as Oichin Bayis Sheni is only tfel and being Abayis, that even the second Beis Hamikdash should be nothing lacking. Still got an Oren there. Was noch mehr? It's even more. Das hat bewornt, as the Oren Gufa soll bleiben ganz. This made sure that the ark itself should remain whole. Und von ihm wird zurück aufgebaut werden der Bayis Shlishi. And from it, from him, from the Oren, will be rebuilt, not new, but rebuilt. The Beis Hamikdash Shlishi, Kinal Siftes said earlier, Siftes, that it's not going to be a new structure, but it's a rebuilding of the old structure through, like the Etzem Luz, through that Oren which is in the Mokum HaKenis. The base, based on this, we can also explain in the inner matter of things, the Drei Lishonos was the Rambam Zogt, wegen der Mokum Shenignas by Oren, the three languages that the Rambam uses when he talks about the place that the Oren was hidden. B'matmoinios, akumois v'akal kalis. The remit is the Rambam merames dem ilui. The Rambam here hints to the advantage, the elevation, was his reingegeben geworden in the Mikdash, that had been put into the Mikdash. Durch them, through this, was bona by mokim lignes by Oren, by building a place in the Mokim Kodesh HaKadoshim to Haidor, Afal Pias Bichitzonius, is das verbunden mit Inyan HaChurban, although externally it is tied with the destruction of the building. Soifer L'Chorev, at the end it's going to be destroyed, is over Davke Dur der Yerida, but it's specifically through that descent. That brings the correction and the repentance of the Yerida. The Aliyah that brings about the elevation. This Yerida, the destruction, brings about the elevation. It goes down into revealing the real depth of a Yid, the Aliyah. As Vert Nizgala, it is revealed the Bechinas von Matmoinios Amukos, the deepest treasures, the deepest hidings, the Hechste Madreges in the Lakus, those highest steps and levels in godliness. Was mitzad atzmam on their own zainen ze mat moinios amukos. They are deep treasures, deep hidden. Loshen rabim, many, very, very deep. Omik, that's why amukos, deep, plural. Omik miyim tzerno, as the pasuk says, how deep, who can find it? Through a straight, usual work of service to Hashem, they cannot be drawn down. Specifically through the work, the service of tshuva, repentance, when the person conducts himself, not as Hashem made the person straight, nor b'derech shel al kalois, that's the third lashon, in a crooked way. But here we're talking about lemaliusa, not in a crooked way, but in an unusual way. You're getting to the hamshoche by through tshuva. That you can draw down these deep treasures that are hidden. They don't come down straight, nor but through a returning light, akal kalis, that is the roundabout way. This will be openly in the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi, in the third Beis Hamikdash, the Binyan Nitzchi, the eternal building. That will be built and revealed very speedily in our days. With the true and complete redemption through our righteous Mashiach. This is Mesichas Shabbos Parshas Devarim Tavshin Mem Aleph.